for it. It's an extremely emotional interview. This is a real life survivor of MK Ultra. I was connected to her through my dear friend Richard Willett at Iconic, who had the pleasure of speaking with her, and he said, "You have to talk to her. This is a very real case. It'll put a human face on a very inhuman tactic that we know about, and it gets dismissed in the conspiracy world as being, tinfoil hat type stuff. Oh, you guys with your MK Ultra, and you're talking about the celebrities that got their minds wiped and things like that. Yeah, that's a real thing. That actually happens. MK Ultra is not some sort of theory. It's an actual project that the CIA was deeply behind, and by all accounts, it never really went away. It really just kind of went underground. So please enjoy my interview with Annalie Cummings. Well, we're here with Annalie Cummings. I'm excited to get into the story that you told to our mutual friend, the great Rich Willett, over at Iconic and Classified. It's great to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Well, we're gonna get into some personal, your backstory, which is extremely interesting. Obviously, when we talk about things like mind control subjects, we get into a realm where it's very sad and it's not your fault, and we feel a ton of compassion, and we have all those, but we also have a million questions, and I really want to ask you to explain this as best you can as somebody who's been an experiencer. Now, I've read about MK Ultra, Monarch, mind control, Kathy O'Brien, the whole list of the things that have gone on in the past, but it's all very I don't know, academic to me. I read it in a book or I hear somebody give an interview about it, but to have an experiencer, somebody that's gone through this, who can lay this out in their own words, is going to be extremely helpful to people. Most of this audience already understands that this is a real thing. This isn't somebody making up, I was mind controlled because, as an excuse to get out of why your homework was late or something like that. I mean, we understand that this is a serious situation run by some devious individuals, and we're not discounting that. There's a segment of the population that would hear this and go, "Oh, you guys are crazy, you with your stories and whatnot." But we've all done too much research into these topics to know that there's something here, that this is a real thing. And I'm curious if you could just start from the beginning, give me just a little bit of insight as to who you are, like how this started. This seems to be multi-generational, or at least something that follows people throughout the course of their life. How did this happen to you? Why were you selected? What was your background?
Yeah, so, I just wanna say I appreciate the compassion, and that's an important part in being able to navigate this, and being able to have, um, the data sets and then also the, heart-based awareness to navigate that. But the reality is on planet right now is that we don't have a whole lot of examples of real transparency. And so, part of why I have chosen to come forward again, because I tried in 2011 to 2013, is that people need to see what this looks like, and they need to know. Also, I think what would be helpful at this time is to understand what the mindset of the perpetrators is, because not a lot of people understands what it's like to have to sit at the dinner table every night with a sociopath and what their own cognitive dissonance was. So, I would like to share some examples of that, following your lead on how what that's really like. So my story is that I was born to parents who were, at the time when they met, and then soon after married, were at the Galton Laboratory for Eugenics in London. Okay. And that is a very significant place with, you've gone into this with your work on transhumanism and the Huxley brothers. And
Right.
so eugenics is transhumanism. And the Huxley brothers and the Brave New World and the eugenics program, which we know fairly well from the Nazis, but that was long predating that. So they were there, and their background is my mother, who got her MD in South Africa. She was held in institutions up until around the age of 6 in South Africa during the 40s, um, because of her genetic blood disorder, which her mother shared, and she had a sister who also had this, who was murdered by the doctors. Um, and I think there may have been mind control, I don't know. And then she survived her childhood, which was very traumatic growing up in South Africa during apartheid. Her father had been away as a special forces soldier in the war. And then she gets her medical doctor degree out of the University of Johannesburg, and then decides to go to the Galton Lab for Eugenics. So that family background, trauma, dissociation for her personally, but also living in a place they were Boer nationalists. So basically Nazi South
Yeah.
version, in
Yeah,
South
yeah.
Africa, and stories that came out of that. So, I think the story always went that she wanted to get away from that, and that wasn't her. But I mean, you don't write a letter and try and join a eugenics lab that was still using the name eugenics at that time, and not want to sign up for that agenda, right? So they're there. My father, he is from Canada, but I have photos of him as a Queen Scouts shaking Queen Elizabeth's hand. So even if it's just a um sort of public display, when you're shaking a hand with someone at that level, you are making an energetic agreement to fulfill their stuff. Okay. So he had done that. Then he was at McGill for his undergraduate doing weird animal stuff. And then
Wow.
goes to the Galton Lab. They meet. And then from there, he is not awarded his PhD because he's deemed too dangerous for the eugenics works.
Whoa.
And
When you're too
yeah,
dangerous for eugenics, what was he working on that was deemed to be so dangerous?
well, I think, so when I report this, I'm just reporting the narrative that I was given. And I have certain opinions on that, but I'm just going to report the narrative was that he was messing up some of the experiments and making it so that um, the data wasn't conclusive. I don't think that's correct. I think he was involved in some occult practices that, and either wasn't keeping secrecy or something like that. Um, so from there, they go to McGill. And again, me trying to figure this out is where I think that that's more accurate, that he was maybe not secretive enough with the occult aspect of the eugenic stuff going on at the Galton, and that's why he wasn't given the degree, because they didn't want him as a liability. Um, but nevertheless, um, he and my mother decide to get married, and they go to back to McGill University in Montreal. So McGill is known as the place where Ewan Cameron was doing his work on MK Ultra. Now they got there in probably um 1971, I'm thinking. I was not conceived until 1975. So that puts them there for almost 4 or 5 years my mother was doing a postdoctoral research project. I don't know what my father was doing there. So this is again quite a problem.
Yeah.
When they don't tell you much, and just little snippets. And so this was when Cameron was there. The MK Ultra stuff with the involvement at the hospital had already come out, and was already being looked at critically by the stuff happening with the US and survivors. However, the work with Cameron never finished. It never ended. And that's really something I want to communicate, is that when you look up anything online, unless you're looking in the kind of circles people like you and I run in with research, everything about MK Ultra and the mind control experiments is like, oh, this was really terrible and it's done now. And no, it never
Of
stopped. It just went underground. It
course.
continued. And there were lots of other neurobiologists who were there at the time, that were very key figures in this. So um usually when they've decided they've got a good set of candidates that they're going to work for the mind control, They have a history of dissociative capacity with themselves. So my mother, multi-generational trauma, institutional trauma, this growing up in South Africa during apartheid and seeing the violence that happens there. Her father came back from the war, a very violent man. And then my father, his father had fought in World War II for the Canadian forces, and he was at the Battle of Vimy. So very bloody battle. He was an artilleryman. So this concussive impacts of the artillery basically gave him, later in his life he had Parkinson's, but it gave him some kind of like brain injury. And he came back and was sexually abusive to his daughter, um, my aunt, and beat his son, who was uh like not his son, so adoptive son, the first child of my grandmother, and then had 3 of his own. So, this history of family trauma, abusive trauma, that's exactly what they're looking for, because the capacity to dissociate is genetic, and it's also something that is kind of trained. So, this is a concept that is fairly new to me, and yet I've known it all my life, is that when you're so if you're have dissociative parents, a lot of, survivors of the concentration camps say, and then they have children later on, would say this. So you're going to switch in tandem with them. So if they are violent and strange and dissociating in this weird way where their violent parts are going to come out, you will then dissociate into a part that will support them, and you'll be loving, and, so you're going to switch in tandem. So that's very useful if you're going to be worked in pairs with some of the political stuff, because it's like you're already tuned. So think of particle physics and how things can work as a wave and things can also work as 2 particles. This is kind of an important thing with understanding how quantum physics and quantum mechanics might have a lot to speak about how dissociative capacities and why we were being used or worked, particularly in stuff related to like the Philadelphia project, and after that matures into the next project and stuff. So they're like that at the Galton, and then McGill, and then I am conceived and they move to New York City. And I am born at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City in 76.
It's a deep state
And
hospital if I've ever heard one.
yeah, I mean, talk about the Shabbat Lubavitch messianic cult. Just
Yep.
stamp the name right on that sucker. So
Yep.
then my mother is there doing more postdoctoral research stuff. So she's a pediatric geneticist. And then my father was at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center at the
Okay.
time there.
Yeah.
And then from there, pretty much you begin being worked while you're in the womb, and they will poke and prod the mother and make it so it's basically like, I mean, if you look at some of the work from Svali, which I frankly have a hard time looking at for a lot of reasons, but the stuff that that survivor who was a programmer talks about is like basically they're prodding a fetus inside a womb so that it has the perception of being raped while in the womb. Okay, so that's how it starts. You start
And
to
your
fracture
mother
before you're conscious.
and your mother was involved in genetics for, uh, children, right? So she
Yeah.
would be predisposed to, or she was already kind of working in that environment with that
Yeah, I
emphasis?
don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, I think this is what happened to me while she was pregnant with me. I
Mhm.
don't know. I mean, like, they don't tell you anything. They only tell you what you need to know, which is like almost zero. And so part of why it's really hard to come forward as a survivor is because you have to have your own ability to wade through research and material in a very like rational, just sort of logistical level, like I think probably a lot of your viewers do. And then also be very self-aware of what your own window of tolerance is going to be on an emotional, mental, spiritual, psychic level, because this isn't just um this isn't just information that's like random, it's going to hit you. So a couple of examples of that from your own work that I've looked over your a little bit of what I can access of your work. And you talk about the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, being related to the Huxleys and that. Okay. And suddenly it was like, well, all this data points like that I've had is like these interstellar fragments. When, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. Why I had the little panda stickers all over my clipboard when I was a teenager, and why we always got the stupid, free Christmas cards from them every year because my
For
mom
sure.
was just throwing money at that. Why? Well, because that's her
Right.
club. That's the X Club.
Right.
So she's a member of the British Royal Society. It's all right there. So you have to, that's a fairly ordinary quotidian sort of data point. But for me, it was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Right. It's funny how it jumps right back out. Can I ask you a question about your mom? Since you mentioned she had a genetic blood disorder. What is that? What was it that they were looking for? That is this a disorder that makes you predisposed to programming, or why were they so curious about this disorder?
Okay, so the disorder is called hemoglobin shepherd's bush, which is named for the district in London where the Galton lab is, and the Galton is Darwin's old lab. So uh, the blood disorder itself is extremely rare. As of right now, there's like probably less than 10 or 20 people worldwide who have been diagnosed with this. I think probably there's more, but they don't want to diagnose it. And like, how would you know to look for this if they're trying to keep it kind of under wraps? But they wrote it up in the paper Nature in 1970. So the disorder is that inside the center of a red blood cell, there is an iron ring and five-sided. And I have a part that wants to throw something in here. One ring to rule them all.
I was
Let's
gonna
go
say
Tolkien on that.
five-sided like a pentagram. I don't know. That's
Yeah,
what
like a
I'm
pentagram, like a one ring to rule them all. The ring Eye of Sauron.
right, right.
Precious. Okay,
Mm.
so the five-sided iron ring, and it has a single base pair substitution in the DNA chain. So aspartame to guanine. I am not a scientist, so it's A for
Yeah,
G instead of G for A. And
gotcha.
this causes a thing where the tertiary structure of the iron ring, under certain circumstances of high elevation, which has to do with pressure changes and oxygenation, and they weirdly enough call this the oxygen dissociation curve. Um, I'm not sure why. It has to do with how well you're going to be able to release the oxygen into cells and organs for life. And then certain medications, particularly sulfonamides, sulfur. And then uh high temperature, so fever. Okay. So when it's exposed to any of those or all of those, the 3D structure, the tertiary structure of the iron ring shape shifts
Okay.
and forms a crystalline precipitate inside the red blood cell. And then this will go through the spleen. So if you look into Chinese medicine, spleen is our key. It's the source of our will. It's the source of our energy. It's also our connection to the earth. And the spleen will see this and say, there is something really wrong here. So most people would understand like sickle cell anemia, okay, where it's going to make the little sickle shape. The red blood cell still stays spherical, but there's a crystal inside of it instead. And so the spleen sees this and then sequesters the cells. So you go through these periods of massive hemolysis where, when I've gone down, you normally have around 5 pints of red blood cells. And within a course of 2 or 3 days, you suddenly have around 3 pints of red blood cells, and the rest of it you've peed out in this very strange, German beer looking
Right, right, right.
your urine. And so they're looking for that, and they were very interested in that. Now, I don't know why. No one's ever going to tell me, but in doing the research, like with David Icke and all this other stuff, there's this shape-shifting component. And then when I saw all the stuff coming out with COVID, okay, and in the vaccine, So what are you looking at? You're looking at these spike proteins and how proteins being if there's a DNA misassembly and you're dealing with mRNA that's splitting the DNA chain and then putting in a new segment, and then that's causing proteins to be formed that are then distorted, and won't allow normal organic, physiologic processes to occur. I had to ask myself in 2020 where there was just a huge amount of survivor guilt going on because I realized that I had been seeing this agenda roll out for a very long time, and I was like, "Oh my god, this piece and this piece and this piece."
Right.
So I think there's something to do with that. And then, yeah, the oxygenation, if you think about 2 pieces there I just wanna go into. Kathy O'Brien talked about how when she got away and her daughter Kelly, they were in Alaska, and Kelly was having respiratory failure. Okay, so part of that is they will encode your respiratory drive to where you feel like you're being suffocated, and there's ways they've done this. How did they do this? They do it with iron lungs, and, if you're gonna talk or if you're gonna try and get help and they put you in an iron lung so you can't expand and get the oxygenation stuff. So look at what happened in COVID with the respirators and stuff like that. That's straight out of programming, straight
Yeah.
out of the mind control
Wow.
projects. Okay. And Kathy indicated that there was someone I spoke to who's an expert in the DID, and he said he's been dealing with a lot of survivors who have the respiratory distress component and how that was done. There's another thing that they would do. There's a liquid that is like hyper oxygenated liquid, but it is actual liquid. I don't know what it's called. And they would put people in that. So there's the sensation that you're drowning because you're in a fluid, but it's actually hyperoxygenated. So when you take it in and you get it in your lungs, they will be fluid filled, but you will be oxygenating.
Did you ever see the movie, Abyss? The Abyss, where they go
Okay,
down
right?
deep
Or the
diving?
Nirvana baby.
They fill in the movie The Abyss, they fill their in order to allow them to breathe, they fill them with liquid oxygen. They have to, like, learn to kind of breathe in water in their dive suits, and it's very uncomfortable at the beginning, but it's filled with it. James Cameron was involved in that. I get bad feelings from that guy. I think he knows more than what he's talking about. Anyway, so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
when you mentioned the liquid oxygen and things like that, I'm like, I've seen that in movies before. I've seen them
Yeah, or even just,
roll that out.
the thing that went everywhere, the baby in the Nirvana cover video with the holding the donut, they may have
Right.
gotten a kid who was able to do that, be underwater like that, but it's coding, okay? So,
Mm.
I'm gonna miss the word here, but a lot of people in this genre of stuff is talking about how so much of social media and that is about signaling. Okay, all of mind control is signaling. How you would be told to wear certain things as an identifier. Look at the shaved head, blonde haircut. Okay, I've done that 2 or 3 times in my life. It's maybe so they can get better EEG and stuff, but that's not it. It's so that when you go out in public and you're gonna try and access help or life-sustaining resources or whatever, you're already pegged. So anyone who's cult, and the cult is everywhere now in lots of different forms, whether it's satanic ones, Luciferian ones, just kind of ordinary thuggery, drug running ones, whether it's medical, academic, higher level, political. I mean, there's all different versions. If you're gonna go out with that hairdo and then try and get help, anyone who's cult is gonna see that, and then it's like it's putting the X on your head, okay? The mark of the beast, whatever you wanna call it, some of that. So a lot of it is they're working on signaling in that. So I'll jump
Brit
back to you because 'cause I'm
When
gonna
Britney
rant.
Spears shaved her head, when she had her meltdown and shaved her head, did you connect with that? Did you see?
Oh, absolutely. I was like, "Oh, well, now I know why I do that." Is it okay if I play a little show and tell here?
Sure,
I
absolutely.
pulled out, a couple of things. So, when I was trying to put the parts together, I have about 8 journals, um, because, they weren't willing to talk openly. That's not allowed, right? So I would write, I'd wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares and I'd record the dreams or, just write little things, and then I would go back and read it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, there's more than one set of handwriting here. There's more than one set of sort of voice or worldview or, child parts in that." So, part of being able to work the system, there's always 8 parts. They can't split you into more than 8. They've tried. It doesn't work. You might have, hundreds of altars or different, I just call them parts because I don't like that word altar because it's too triggering with the ritual stuff, but they will section into parts. Okay. So the first part they always make is the sexual abuse part. Sometimes there's colors associated with these. So red is usually that part. Then, there'll be ones that are the psychic parts. There's a whole section of parts that are designed to make you act crazy. So what is that? One, you may be taught to act completely batshit crazy so that you end up in a hospital where you can be reaccessed and reprogrammed. Now, it's really important for survivors who, especially, I'm just trying to get this out there. If you think you might have been mind controlled, do not go to an ER saying, "Hi, I might have been mind controlled." I did this in 2013. My family member took me in because I was acting absolutely batshit crazy. And I said, "I'm being psychically driven. They're psychically driving me." Okay, so that's straight out of the Ewan Cameron stuff where they would put high voltage electricity in you for hours on end, and then first you're shaking, and then you kind of go still, and then you're fragmented, and they can do what they want. So, those batshit crazy parts when Brittany went Brittany, that's now a phrase, and uh that's a signal. Again, you might show up in an ER and you're like, "Oh my god, suicidal." Okay, so this is me when that happened. My daughter's in the picture, so I'm gonna try and. So yeah, that's one of the times that happened. I lost about 40 pounds. I wouldn't eat. I couldn't eat. And so this is how they do it before a ritual or before I would be taken to conferences all over the world, locked in hotel rooms for days on end. My mom would come back after the conferences, and then you're hungry, you're more stressed, and then when you're wear down, overwhelmed, when they've done that enough, then they will work you. So either in the ritual stuff or in my case, some of it was political, and meeting political figures, celebrities, and that, and some of it was the like what I might term psychic warrior stuff, in museums with ritual objects and them trying to access whatever they thought they could access from it, whether they wanted access into older timelines or ghosts or I don't know. I just have the memories, so I can't really speak to their angle of what they were trying to get to. I just know from my side. But yeah, so that's the Gone Brittany, and it's to signal. And if you show up, Allison Miller is a clinician who has a book out called Becoming Yourself, Healing from Ritual Abuse and Mind Control. She also has a book called Healing the Unimaginable, that's written for therapists and other clinicians who are getting people in their practice who may, they suspect may be survivors of extreme abuse or ritual abuse or mind control abuse. And she confirms in this book that this is what is happening, that if you go, it's mostly big city hospitals. If you go into the ER, there will be cult people working there. And if they suspect that you are MK, you will be identified. And, all it's going to take is one session with the electricity, one session with the sodomy, one session with the drugs, and you will be put back on pasture. So if you were trying to go off the reservation, you will be put back out to pasture, or you will be accessed in a way where they can work you for the sex trafficking, the drug muling, which is huge, the political stuff, all whatever you were tasked to. And the cult that's doing it in the ER may not be the one that you are working for. They get paid money. The last time I was had this happen was 2019, and I'm in a big city ER, and thankfully my family member stayed with me, and this really creepy dude came in to take a chest x-ray. There was no reason for me to get a chest x-ray. I was in there for psychiatric reasons because I saw an eyeball show up in a necklace, and I thought that Bloody Mary was in the bedroom with me. And my husband was like, think we need to go into the hospital." And
But
I knew. I was
you
like,
don't need
"Okay."
a chest X-ray for that, though.
No, you don't. You don't need a chest X-ray for Bloody Mary. Just no. And so this guy comes in, and I was doing this weird thing with my eyes. So some people may have heard of horizontal nystagmus. This is what they would be testing in a traffic stop if they
Huh.
suspect you've been drunk driving. And this is where your pupils will ping on the side, you know? So they'll do this and they're looking for that ping. That's horizontal nystagmus. With DID, something that I've found this because when you do get institutionalized, you will meet some of the others who have had this done. And I met this amazing, very wounded soul who had this, and he was just on loop backs. He was pacing like a polar bear in a zoo, saying these weird phrases. And I just got in real close, and I really connected on a heart level. And his eyes had been like, sort of looked like he was, cross-eyed but outwards.
Mhm.
And then I connected with him, and his eyes came forward, and he switched, and he was able to be his real self
Oh,
for
wow.
just a moment. And then he went, "Okay, so what it will look like," and I mean, it's hard for me to know what ordinary people are like because I'm not that, but, if you were to put, like, a piece of paper in front of your face with, like, a small dot so you could focus in on it, and you get there, and you'll get to a point where it's close enough in where you'll find you can make 2 images,
Mhm.
okay? So that you'll be able to visually split it into 2 images, and you will see, 2 dots, or if it's
Right,
a book, you'll see 2 books. And
right.
then you can choose whether you're gonna look at it through the left eye dominant or right eye dominant. So that's parts of your brain. So it'll still be 2 images, but you're either seeing left side of that or right side. So I don't know, I'm sure they have a term for this. I'm calling it diagonal nystagmus because that's what my eyes look like when they do it. That's what I've seen other people. So again, these are things, and what that is that's the split. That's the moment where your brain is already through the corpus callosum is splitting consciousness, and it's because you've been hit with something that's too impossible to deal with. So this is the cognitive dissonance. What's cognitive dissonance? It's being able to hold 2 contradictory ideas simultaneously at the same time and still keep going. So that's this, okay? That's like, I cannot come to grips with the fact that this has happened, and I need to know that this has happened because they're gonna come again and do it again if I don't act batshit crazy. So,
Mhm.
batshit crazy, here's what I'm running away from. Here's where I need to know what it is. And so the way I did this and the way I was able to escape was that somewhere in the parts as they were fracturing me all these years, you know, um, really through my 20s, and when I finally graduated university, I was able to get away long enough to sort of, I mean, I had been putting it together for a while, but to get away long enough was that I had always had a part that they didn't maybe know existed, and what I said to myself was, so their command was, "Always remember to forget." And this other very clever, beautiful part said, "Never forget to remember. Always remember to forget, never forget to remember. Always remember to forget, never forget to remember." It's like being stretched, right? Like this
Right.
elastic band, and then enough heat and pressure. What does your elastic band that's been on your poster in the mom's attic for, you take it apart and it crumbles, and
Right.
it snapped me right back together, and I got all this memory back in a huge chunk. I don't recommend that because that window of tolerance and getting a whole bunch back at once it's gonna be more than you can handle, if you've really been worked, and, so but that was how my part, I mean, somewhere in my higher self or the soul level was like, "Okay, you have to engage with them. There's no escape. You will be starved, you will be murdered, you will, be left out in the cold, so you have to do what they tell you, but we're gonna squirrel away a key, like the princess and the pea, and you will
Mhm.
know where the pea is, and when it's time to find the pea, you will find it." And
Right.
that was just how I did it, and people who are coming forward now, the reason you're able to do that is because you have been so clever, and just honor yourself for that because wow,
I
it
hate to
takes a
take this
lot.
I hate to take this back to the celebrity side of things because I know that so many of the people that are suffering from these situations are not celebrities. But I can't help but connect the dots to you mentioned you being born in, Mount Sinai Hospital. The sister hospital in Beverly Hills, Cedar-Sinai, is where everybody goes when they have the breakdowns, and in the last couple of years, we had a Kanye West situation where Harley Pasternak, his controller out of Canada, said, "I'm gonna send you back to dreamland if you're not careful." And I remember Kanye going away for a while and then coming out with blonde hair, much like you said, very shaved, but blonde at the top and acting extremely different, very different. Wasn't talking about the Jews anymore. He's talking about something he's totally toned down. Is that was that a situation that you kind of could relate to, a handler coming to get somebody under control? I mean, obviously, it's a celebrity situation, so it's a bit different when there's cameras in front of your face, but those text messages, that he shared about this relationship with Harley Pasternak, who, for those who don't know, his background is in Canadian military psych warfare,
Is he out
you
of
know?
Calgary? Do you know? Is he out of
I don't know
Calgary?
if he's out of Calgary, but he's the personal trainer to the stars, but he's also a mind control expert, and he's the guy that said, "I'll take your kids away from you and put you in dreamland forever." So, I wondered about that when I saw that. I think everyone that's in our kind of world takes a look at some of these celebrities and they go, "Yeah, they've been tinkered with in their brains." Do you ever is that was that something did you ever see that situation with Kanye or what or does something like that ring a bell that the handler will come
Yeah,
get
well,
you and
absolutely. I mean, I don't have contacts with celebrities at that level, but, where I was at in Irvine, my high school is where Will Ferrell graduated from. It's where Dita Von Teese, who was Marilyn Manson's wife for a time,
Mhm.
and doing this burlesque stuff, she graduated from there. Um Longest running cast member of Mad TV, my dear friend, I'm not gonna name her, she knows who she is, did a lot of Britney Spears impressions. She came out of there, she and I were in some of the drama productions together. Quite a few of the K-pop stars who went away came to Irvine, did their high school there and then went back to Korea and became K-pop stars, so take the same MK stuff. I mean, Orange County, LA, San Diego, 33 third parallel, and the connections that are going there, the way the propaganda that was begun by the Nazis, I think it's Goebbels, right, who is their
Yep.
propagandist, and migrate those skill techniques on how to manipulate perception and that to so, absolutely. I mean, I don't know it from the Kanye side, and some of it I try not to look a whole lot, although I have, on occasion benefited from the work over at Vigilant Citizen just, because he's been pretty good about capturing the visual imagery, which if you don't interact with these kind of people, at least the visual imagery might, you know, begin to solidify the picture, but absolutely, this is where it's all done, and it's pretty common, and, they may work you I guess these higher level people probably have handlers, and they can't even really live their life anymore, like, they couldn't go to the grocery store or whatever. For ordinary MKs or ones who were not, in the public eye, they can put you back out with your family and not really worry, they will, you know deprive you of any access to financial resources, or you'll be relying on cult family members for any kind of financial resources. They'll get you hooked back on drugs again, like not street drugs, but pharmaceutical drugs. And then from there, because you can't even stand that, maybe, look at the proliferation of marijuana. I mean, there's a reason that happened because you're much more controllable, and, I know some people are like, "Oh, medical marijuana, it saved me, I'm more relaxed and more than." Yeah, well, Soma, right? Brave New World.
Right.
What's Soma? It's legalized marijuana, and why were they able to do that? Because they finally got the hybridization and the strains to where they had figured out what was gonna work well. So, I mean, certainly, I've spent plenty of years of my life going down that road and, it had some useful things to, like, make me not murder myself, but, Eventually, if you really wanted to get down and do the work and get your memories back and figure out how to help the situation on this planet that all of us are in now, you're gonna have to set down the addictions. I saw a little bit of your recent stuff on setting down the addictions is like our way of like we all have to do this on like whatever level, you know, you're addicted, we're just gonna have to deal with the fact that, yeah, we got a problem,
Yeah.
Americans Anonymous,
Yeah,
right? That's
yeah,
my
exactly. Yeah, that was yeah. Um, I'm interested, I'm interested in the eugenics component of this because these people, I mean, out of the UK, you mentioned Galton Institute. This is a real dangerous place for this is the sort of science that is driving transhumanism, well, the rebranding of eugenics. As we start to talk about the World Economic Forum, their fourth industrial revolution, the blending of man with machine into what they call transhumanism. Um, where the general public hears that and they go, "Oh, this is a person who's going to get a robotic arm to help them. Maybe they've lost their arm and they're going to get a robotic arm. Isn't that great? We're using medical technologies to solve these problems." And it's like, well, yeah, but that's not what transhumanism is. Transhumanism is something different than that. When you were going through all of this with Galton Institute and whatnot, what were they doing? Were they doing medical experiments on the kids that had gone through these programs? What was the were they what were you used for in relation to the eugenic side of things?
Okay, so I was never used with other kids. I was always kept completely isolated. And the way this played out was that my mother's main mentor was Harry Harris out of the Galton Lab, and when they decided they wanted eugenics to go worldwide, transhumanism worldwide, Harry, went to University of Pennsylvania, which is where Ben Franklin, was the big spearhead of that. Ben Franklin's well associated with the As You Like stuff out of the Hellfire Caves. So there was already mind control happening there. Some survivors have come out of the UPenn projects. So eugenics moves to the US there. So for me, Harry Harris is like he's this really big figure in genetics and eugenics. And he was our family friend. He was my mother's mentor. She had this really weird relationship with him where it was like almost more like grandfather, granddaughter, or like magician apprentice and
Right.
mage apprentice. It was very weird. And, he would come to our country house in upstate New York, which was located on White Lake near where Woodstock was held. And so I was worked there in very
Mm.
intimate ways with the sexual abuse and with the subtle mind control programming, which is more like they won't acknowledge you even exist, and then you're like, if you're under 6 years old and you're not being acknowledged and you're hungry or you have you know, bathroom needs, they'll deny you bathroom needs and that. But then there's also a lot of sampling. So, I was taken to Mount Sinai, my regular pediatrician was there, but then they had this whole troop of like 20 or more medical students who all wanted to come in and feel my enlarged spleen. So I have to sit in this sort of partly upside down canted position so you can feel the spleen better. And then one after one, they would come in and palpate my spleen. Okay, so ostensibly not that big of a deal. Okay, but if you are coding a kid to be able to tolerate gang rape, what do? You're in a hospital. It's for your own good. You're teaching these people. They need to know. And then they do that with, oh, we'll palpate your spleen. And then, you go to the Horace Mann preschool run by Andrew Carnegie. And I broke the story in 2012. The sexual abuse scandal that broke at the big school there also included the preschool division in something very a la McMartin preschool case. And they won't even talk about it. They won't let you even, no one wanted to hear this. So that was how that was done. I was then taken to the Galton quite a bit, ages around 10, 11, 12. Okay, so I'm being taken to conferences, the International Human Gene Mapping Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and, darkened lecture hall, and I'm trying to color on a legal pad, and the lecturer says, "Oh, And then the mouse exploded. I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm 6 and I'm hearing the mouse exploded. She always used to say, my mother used to say, Miss Mouse. So National Institutes of Mental Health, NIM, The Secrets of NIM, Mrs. Quimby and the Mice of NIM, and then I'm being called Miss Mouse. Well, I knew by then what happens to all the mice at the end of their experiment. They're all cold, including the controls. And if I'm being told I'm a control sample, I need to be locked in the office for hours and hours with no food, no water, no telephone, no toilet. And then she comes in, she needs a blood sample, and I have to submit to that if I want to use the bathroom, if I want to. So the way they use like toileting as like leverage and pain control or pain, stimulus. And then they just try. So some of it's very subtle and done over a long period of time on a very familiar, very intimate basis. And then some of it's just straight up weird. So at the Galton when I was 10, I was there held in locked confinement in the offices quite a bit, but then there was all this other weird political stuff started. So we were taken one day, she and I go to Trafalgar Square, and I have this idea in my head that I have to feed the birds. Mary Poppins, very well used in the programming. Feed the birds, tuppence again, right? Okay, so I'm going to get the bird seed, and I have this image in my head of some like statue idol. I now know that that's in South America. And I'm going to hold the pigeon food out in my hands. Well, what's going to happen in Trafalgar Square? You are going to get inundated by a Hitchcock-like experience of the birds, right? So I got covered with bird shit and they've scratched my face up and my mom is embarrassed. So this is a public display of humiliation for me, but also for her because now she has this like, it's gross. And so she rips off my clothes and throws them in the garbage and we go into Harrods department store and I get the London Fog trench coat and I love this thing, right? But, they give me the trench coat. Are you kidding me? So then the next day we go back to Trafalgar. I have to wear the trench coat and there happens to be a demonstration with the people protesting the killing of the fur seals in like the Sweden, Norway, Finland area. And there's this big demonstration in Trafalgar Square. Trafalgar Square, lots of big demonstrations. David Zayef had some wonderful ones there. Okay, and they're playing this out where there's like a little toy seal on stage and they demonstrate beating it with clubs and someone artfully throws blood around. I mean, look at all the crap that happened with like art and blood and New York City stage stuff. And it was just so gross, right? Okay. I'd already seen this shit. So this is 1985, maybe in 84. And, but then it all goes to hell. And there's this other thing that happens and the whole demonstration turns into a riot. And my mother and I are sort of ushered off. I mean, the sensible thing to do now, looking back, would be to run the fuck away and go far away from all of this. And as fast as my little 7-year-old legs could carry me. And instead, we're shuttled onto the nearby double-decker bus, the London bus. We don't cower under the seats and hide. No. We're sent up to the upstairs roof that's open. Right on the edge, and I have to watch. So working this memory, it took about 2 years to work this memory, and I would just be a sobbing wreck, vomiting on the floor through most of it. I can do it now. But, and I have to watch. And so there were people who, just like they had thrown the blood on the stage, they took red paint and threw it all over the Norwegian embassy, which is also there. And, so they were working me in like some kind of political capacity where there's a large event. There's this is before CCTV cameras. This is before they had, this is like kids sort of psychic warfare, sort of man on the street, sort of spy. I was literally given the trench coat after the public humiliation the day before. And that's all I get. The rest of the trip, almost all gone. The only part I can get back is me sitting in the bathroom. She's like on the phone and typing on her typewriter. She had this little portable typewriter. It's clickety clack, and on the phone. and I'm in the bathroom of this teeny tiny London hotel, and I have made a teeny tiny little pack of cigarettes with tape and paper, and I'm practicing smoking cigarettes behind the toilet. I mean, and she hated smoking, and I have asthma. So who taught me that? Who
It's
taught me that
wild.
if I was stressed and I needed to relax, I mean, smoking's just about trying to teach yourself to deep breathe, right? Only with poison
Right.
instead, so people who are dealing with that addiction, like, useful knowledge. So yeah, and then the whole rest of the trip gone, deleted. But I can get down this teeny tiny exact memory of, like, I can see us sitting on the bus. I can feel her sitting next to me. It's almost like telephoto lens of, like, I can zoom in with binoculars into the red paint but I can't get anything else. And so these were some of the memories that were really traumatic that started to come back, and the traction point for survivors who are gonna be trying to work these parts to come out, and you're like, "What is this? Why do I remember just this?" Is the traction point is recognizing that you have deleted everything else. I mean, the part that stands out of, like, the trauma and the bird scratches and your clothes being thrown away on the street and you're, like, half naked and you get, like, the prize of a cool coat, that's gonna stand out, but don't look at the most obvious thing in the room. Look at what's this other stuff? Why were we at the Galton? Why were so that's some of what the eugenic stuff was. I think they were using me with the blood sampling for something related to the medical, and then the mind control component was part of this, and them working it out. And what I want to emphasize for researchers, because some of this research I just can't do because it's too triggering, is you need to understand that the eugenic stuff has and the transhumanism stuff that's working with Elon Musk and these guys right now, it's always walked hand in hand with the mind control. So if you're like, oh, it might not be that bad to get a prosthetic or a cochlear implant that, plugs into my brain, because now I'll be able to hear like cool music on my iPod. Um, I really think you need to understand that they also want you to be a mind controlled slave, and that the ways in which you're going to be manipulated, then they don't need a jail. They don't need to put everyone in jail. The way this works for me is like, so something important's coming up and you're not going to be able to eat and you're not going to be able to sleep for 5 days. And then, oh, well, you're a piece of shit at work, so you're going to lose your job, or good well not even to try and have a job because there's no way you're going to be able to handle even cleaning a hotel room. I tried this a
Right.
while back. It's like, well, I'll just be a maid. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can clean toilets. We're good. No, no, the hotel rooms. Oh my God. Like my coworkers would find me sobbing in the room trying to make a bed, So
Right.
it's like the eugenics is hand in hand with the mind control. And it's so that they will not need prisons all over the world, because you will already be locked in the prison of your own mind. And why it's worth it to me to come forward right now is that we still have some freedom, and we are still like not completely addicted. And there are still some people out there who have a little bit of money. Don't waste it. Don't waste it. We've got to use this access to resources in whatever form they are very, very efficiently right now for beneficial, benevolent things, like do the research, help some of the people who are mind controlled, or try and talk to these celebrities. How many times have I thought to myself, what if somebody went to Britney and caught her when they saw the diagonal nystagmus and was like, Britney, give me a 20-second interview on how you've been mind controlled. Katy Perry with your fucking eye blink going
Mhm.
on,
Mhm.
Give me 5 minutes. What's it gonna cost? What, they're gonna put you on the stage of the VMAs and make you, act out a lesbian scene and, a gang rape with
Madonna.
all these robot dudes, and
Mhm.
we've only got a little bit left. Don't waste it. And so that's what I just have to say, especially these celebrities.
Yeah.
What have you got to lose? Your millions? They weren't yours to begin with, and they will take
Yeah.
them away, and they will give you a fucking terrible haircut and put you back on the street and say,
Y
"Dance some more." You
yeah.
know?
when you were in Trafalgar Square, you're not too far away from Tavistock, right around the
Yeah,
corner. Did you ever have
yeah,
any
I think it
experience
was
dealing
Tavistock.
with Tavistock?
Um, so the Galton Lab is also a part of the University College London, and thank goodness for Google Maps, okay? So sometimes I'll be like, "I know I was here," and I'll just run around, and then sometimes Street View, and then it's like, "Oh god, no, not the Street View," so can't take that. So, yes, I think Tavistock was involved, and, I don't have any proof of that other than at one point we had been wandering around and there's Hyde Park, and we walked by Tavistock because I remember seeing the lettering, and when I saw that Street View, I was like, "Oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit." Um, and that's all I got, but then we go to UCL, and in the old hall there, they have Jeremy Bentham, who was the founder of University College London, and they have his stuffed mummy in the hall with, like, nice jaunty little ascot and whatnot, and they have a wax head. And this guy who is one of the administrators of UCL comes out and he recognizes my mom. So again, with these like, "Oh, funny to see you here." It's always like, "Wait a minute. Did you know we were coming? Or is
What
this really an accident?" I mean, synchronicity and serendipity when you're mind control is like, you better have your alarms going off because
Yeah.
it's probably planned. So we get there and they're like, "Oh, well, we're having a showing of Jeremy Bentham's real head," you know,
I'll pass.
zombie
Thank you.
apocalypse, right?
I'm
And,
good.
and my mom actually said, "Oh, I don't think she'll be able to take it." And so it was probably the only time she was, but she already knew that I had been worked, and then I was also coming out of stuff that had happened at home, um, in a front altar that was traumatic, and then we went on this trip to London, and then on that trip, I was absolutely obsessed with Miss Saigon and ended up this weird thing of like we didn't have tickets, we waited, and then we finally got last minute. They said we had tickets, we get in, the seats in front of us are empty, and then at the last minute before the curtain goes up for the first act, this dude comes in and sits down and he turns around and looks at me in the eyes. And I mean, looking at this man was like a black hole. And it was Bob Hope. And they're like, "Hi, this is Bob Hope." Really bad. I think what happened was they were testing to see whether or not I recognized him from something that had already happened. So again, the thing with mind control is we don't look at the world with a linear perspective. Like I can track linear, like, okay, it's Friday and on Monday I did this and I can, but I also track in a different way because I have a bunch of different parts that are tracking different times. So the times when they were up or the times when they were, it's easier now that they're not being activated as much. But so I think some of it was like them being called up to see if I had recall of this. Cause if I had already been in a position where I had to meet this guy probably in a very bad way. We just call it VBT, very bad things. Um and then he wanted to check if it was holding, if the amnesic barrier was holding, then you would set up a situation where you would meet this person and see. I mean, that happened a lot. I was used at the World Health Organization conference in Paris, 1989. This is pretty important to me to get this piece out because the World Health Organization and how they were pushing the COVID stuff and the way they're being mobilized right now with the transhumanism stuff and what I think they're gonna come out with soon. I'm not gonna say what that is, but I was used in ritual abuse by the World Health Organization in Paris, 1989, which was the year of the bicentennial. So lots of stuff going on. It's a ritual thing because of it being, the uprising and the revolution and it won. Yeah, they love to say that you won because then they can go on and go, "Ha, you stupid bastard, you lost and we still own you and we're going to pretend like everything's fine and meanwhile your cage will get ever more dense," right? Okay,
Yeah.
so 1989, lots of stuff going on there. And there happens to be a World Health Organization conference my mother happens to be called, and I was worked that entire week. I mean, the pieces of memory that I get out of that are pretty much out of the, Kubrick film, Eyes Wide Shut, you know? So,
Really?
These weren't celebrities, these were medical doctors, and it was mostly done in settings that resembled, I think it might have actually been in places that resembled these old surgical, s they would do, like, a surgery as, like, a stage performance, and so they had this vertical seating and then
Right.
the place and those are held now as places sort of like museums and that. And a lot of the stuff was done there, and it was medical and it was ritual. So again, they're blending understanding that I know there's a lot of people who don't wanna go into the super woo aspect of that. They're like, "Well, I just want the facts and the science of what are they trying to do," and you have to understand these people will poo-poo all the woo-woo as much
Mhm.
as they can in the front, and then they'll go home and check their astrology charts, and they will go home and do weird rituals and, like, it's absolutely their religion, and they will be able to tell you one thing and act another. So you have to understand that even if they seem medical and they seem like science is God and that, what's been woven into their psyche is deeply occult
Yeah.
and deeply interwoven with the other negative forces that are behind this.
Yeah, this audience
So,
knows a lot about the World Health Organization. They know about the United Nations. We cover that quite a bit here. We know that there's an extremely dark force behind all of that, and you can dismiss it if you want to. If you're somebody that says, "Oh, that's just woo woo," like you said, but you dismiss that at your own peril because it's very real. It's a serious component of this. It's hidden in plain sight in some cases. We watched the 2012 London Olympic opening ceremony, which predicted the whole COVID thing right there. The weaponization of doctors and as they have children on beds and big puppets that are
oh, yeah.
coming to get the kids and all of this stuff. And you're watching this, you're going, "This is about track and field? What is it? What are we doing here? What are we watching? Why am I watching?"
And Annie Lennox singing, "Walking on Broken Glass," okay?
Oh,
Kristallnacht, the
yeah.
Nazi invasion of the okay? And there is literal programming called broken glass programming, and they will have you think that you're gonna go to your freedom, and you run through a plate glass window or break glass and try and cut yourself because you think if you do that, they use the same stuff, they're just mocking you, and they had Annie Lennox sing that song.
Can we talk about the museums? Because 'Cause you've mentioned that in the emails that we've been sending back and forth, but this is something that, I mean, we're gonna in a lot of the audience, we're gonna put our tinfoil hats on for this stuff. We are interested in knowing a little bit more about the British Museum. I wanna know about the Smithsonian Museum. Do you know anything about the Getty Museum? Anything? I mean,
Oh,
there's a lot of darkness associated with these museums open to the general public, and yet underneath or hidden below, there is a whole nother world. What do you know about this?
yeah, I don't know the Getty, but,
Okay.
okay, so little show and tell here. So this was my identifier. This is my Girl Scout coat from 4th grade. When we were, my mother was at the National Institutes of Health, and we had to have the obelisk, the big
Oh, yeah.
knob, as
Yeah, yeah.
Richard would delightfully put it. Um, okay, my name on it, and like delightful badges such as oh, holding the fractured world together.
Oh,
How polite
wow.
of them.
That is a crazy patch to have. I wonder, what do they tell you that that's for in the Girl Scouts?
Don't
Anything
know.
or
There's a couple other I've taken this apart because there's some that I just don't really care to have as, my stinking badges anymore, frankly, but yeah, there's a couple how about this one? Surprise kidnap. Does
what?
this look
It's
like the
okay, for those
child
that are just
catcher?
those that are just listening and not watching, it's a teddy bear holding a lollipop. The lollipop has the pedophile logo inside of it, the swirly, pedophile logo, and it's a teddy bear blindfolded, and above it, it says "surprise," and then on the bottom, it says "kidnap." What
Yeah,
the
and if
fuck?
once wasn't enough, let's do it again.
Oh
Same
my
teddy
god.
bear, only its legs are spread apart,
Yeah.
and it's a
Wha
surprise event,
surprise event is
1985.
blindfolded as well. Holy shit.
Yeah,
What?
these are my stinking badges.
I
Um,
mean, that is I'm
and
sick.
then you get these badges too. I've got 2 museum badges,
Okay.
different museums. Okay, so the museum stuff. What are they doing in museums? ritual objects, historical objects. The Natural History Museum in New York City was where the eugenics conference, I'm gonna miss the date on that, but somewhere in the '60s, and I know Harry Harris was involved in that, along with another Galton person who's now at UCI, Ken Dumars. I'm gonna throw you guys under the bus because you deserve the bus. And Harry's dead anyway. But so that's Natural History Museum in New York City. In 1985 and '86, when we were just my mother and I were, she's at the National Institutes of Health. I would be used on the weekends. It's often done on the weekends with the blood sampling because they can't really have anyone else around. So locked in the conference room, nothing to eat. I only have like Lipton iced tea to drink. And when I saw the Simpsons thing of Bart like writing on the chalkboard, I always laugh at that because that's what I did. I like just wrote on all the chalkboards in the conference room until it was like full. And then of course we have to like erase it all. But so
Erase it all.
sampling, she'd come in
Symbolically erasing your
periodically.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah. And sampled on the weekends. So she's running experiments in her lab, but then she'll need a control sample and she'll come get it. So, I mean, again, this whole quantum entanglement thing of like, well, if the observer of the experiment changes the nature of the experiment, then if you're using me as a control sample, or if I'm at your conference and I'm just listening and that's an experiment too, a living experiment, then how have I altered the quantum entanglement of you just being megabagful jerks? I don't know, but I'm like kind of hopeful that something's going to work out in that regard.
Right.
So then we'll do that. And then every single weekend for an entire year with no stop, we have to go to the Smithsonian museums, and it's always a different one, but the favorite ones were natural history, American history, and then occasionally the Air and Space Museum. So it's kind of like being run like a rat in a maze at that point. You're already fragmented, and sometimes it's like kind of hopeful. There's like a food court down below, and the food comes in on a carousel. So anytime they can use something that's spinning, because they'll spin you like they would sort of astronaut stuff, okay, but they want to spin out another part. So if you're going down one road and you really don't want this other part to come out, they'll spin you to get you to spin out other parts. And then if you're just trying to figure out which one's going to work, like which part are you trying to get me to spit out so that you will stop hurting me in this way? And so some of it's like being run like that. So at this time, there was that big statue of Washington, George Washington, he's mostly naked and he's in the as above, so below sort of Baphomet posture. And you'd walk into the museum and then to the left, he's there, big white alabaster vampire-like statue. And at that time, Fat Man and Little Boy, the shell casings for the atomic bombs were there. So I would spend a lot of time with them. So in the super woo stuff, it's sort of like, okay, so these were objects that the moment before the thing came out of them, so this eggshell, it's responsible for the deaths of millions of people. So there's a psychic, a wave there, a waveform. Okay. So if you're attuned to that and you're there, and then there's this scary, Baphomet type thing. This is okay. So, and then you go just past that statue, and to the left is a huge exhibit. This was there for almost a decade, which, it seems like you get some better curators, but no, there was a reason they kept it there for so long. To the right was the information age, and to the left was farm to factory. Okay. So these were the two, splits in American history, right? The Industrial Revolution and the farming. And in the information age, there's quite a bit in there, but the thing that I always got stuck on was they had an atom smasher from the Philadelphia experiment. So at some point when I was a little bit older, maybe 12, so this happened when I was about 7 or not 8 and 9 to 10, sorry. And then later at 12, we actually went to Los Alamos National Labs, and I was held in lock confinement in someone's office on a Saturday, not blood sampled, but the memories are weird. And then when I saw Juliet Bryant came out with the stuff with the trains that go under from Epstein's Zorro Ranch to that, I was like, "Oh, okay. I have a lot of train stuff." So, but then we were used at the museum afterwards. So the way they're the other night, I was watching something called The Y-Files, and they had an episode on Kincaid's expedition. And, watching it, no big deal. And then just at the end, they flashed to the front of the American Museum of History in Smithsonian. And instantly, I'm on the floor trying to not fall off the earth and like kind of barf coughing. And it took me quite a while because it was just that one image. So I don't really know what they were doing, but the part that came out just last week, she said in bed trying to get my shit together, totally fractured, she said, "They make me hold the things so that the ghosts come out." I don't know what that is. I haven't worked that memory enough, but that's what she told me just the other night. This is a part of me. I know it's a part of me, but she said, "They make me hold the things so the ghosts come out." So somehow they're accessing timelines and stuff. That same time frame, two very interesting things happened. The Museum of Natural History had a huge Darwin expedition to when he went to the Galapagos and developed
Mhm.
the natural selection stuff. And the entire exhibit filled the largest of the halls of the Natural History Museum. Was a special thing. They had posters outside and all that. It was all dead birds, like thousands and thousands of songbirds with cotton stuffed in the eyeballs. At the same time, out on the mall, which is just these lawns, for people who haven't been there, it's these just massive lawns sectioned between the obelisk
Okay.
and the Capitol building, and they were also displaying the AIDS quilts. Okay, so go to Fauci and the AIDS
Yeah.
virus, and if you've looked into what that really is. Okay, so
Yep.
inside the museum, they have all the dead birds of the Darwin expedition. And then outside, they have all of these beautifully heartfelt, sensitive creations from family members who have lost their loved ones to the AIDS virus. And they were designated to be like 6 feet by 3.5 feet. So they looked like the shape of a coffin. And then people could decorate them however they wanted with photos or hand sewn things. And it was all laid out. Okay, so they're mirroring and they create mirrors. And inside the museum was the eugenics thing, and outside was the other eugenics thing called AIDS virus.
Right, right, right.
Um, and here I am, this kid who I work like a spark plug somehow, because when you're hyper vigilant, hyper aware, you're never sure if you're going to get to eat, use the bathroom, be murdered, be experimented upon by your mother or her colleagues, or, taken to a riot and put in the top of the bus, or
Right.
what steamrolled her today, mommy? So this is a kid who, I had this tenacity and I was gonna hold on. This is a triceratops that's outside of the Natural History Museum. And I was gonna hold on for dear life. And this is me in my identifier, Mickey Mouse shirt in front of the big red castle
Yeah.
at the Smithsonian. And I don't look that happy.
Mhm.
When you would go in the Natural History Museum, in the big foyer, there's two things. There's a giant African bull elephant, and if you pick up the handle of their little magic wand, they literally call it a magic wand, put it up to your ear, and the first thing you hear is him go, "Ah," this trumpet of a African bull elephant, and it knocks you off your feet. And then they go on and na 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 na. But there's right next to him is a tiger. Think of Katy Perry, Eye of the Tiger. And the stupid song they made her sing, and then afterwards the tiger's wearing a medallion that says Kitty Purry. Okay, so that goes into the sex programming. There
Yeah.
was a tiger there, and the first thing I would always do, enter the museum, and this tiger is poised as if it's about to
Oh,
pounce.
yeah.
And I would teach myself to stand right in front of it and look directly into its eyes with its paws about to murder you. And that fear, okay? Because when you stood under this thing, it was real, especially if you're 9 and it's a beautiful cat. And you feel the fear and you get it to where it's like that electricity that they would run. And then I can do this. I mean, this is what a soldier does before they go to battle. And they
Yeah.
had a little girl do this at age 9 so that they could wander through Darwin's dead birds? Or do you want to go play outside and wander around the Fauci HIV quilts?
R
You know, and everyone in America saw this, and all these professors who were at these conferences saw me, and they never did a damn thing to help me. So we have to wake up, America. You have to see the kids out there who are being worked and they are hurting. You can't look away anymore, or you will be that kid. If you are going to get recycled into your next lifetime, you might be that kid. If you're going to just, take the jab because you really want your job and you maybe want to afford groceries again, it's beyond grocery bills at this point,
Yeah.
okay? And we have to wake up, and how you choose to do that on a personal level from heart-based awareness, with nonviolence and care for yourself and your family and your fellow human beings, that's up to you. I'm just saying what I realized I was going to have to do on a daily basis for the last 48 years is kind of different from what most of you got. And I really don't recommend you take on another lifetime and come play the role I had, because it's not that cool. It comes with some very unique kind of wisdom about what it takes to come back online as a living being, but I don't recommend it.
No, it doesn't sound appealing, but it does sound interesting, if for no other reason than to, the more educated we get, hopefully we can recognize the signs of something like this. If you're somebody that's struggling, with this, or maybe this had been done to you and you are under a heavy suppression and it's maybe finally starting to get out. Let's wrap up with this. What advice would you have for somebody that was going through, or maybe thinks that they had been put through some of these traumatic experiences, and they don't want to live the rest of their life in uh, anger and resentment and bitterness towards these people, though it would be completely justified, to be fair, to want to harm these monsters. But given what you've learned in the 48 years, what advice would you have for somebody that was dealing with something like this?
Okay, so couple things. One, forgive yourself for believing in their lies. There was probably nothing you could have done. And so forgive yourself. 2, allow yourself to be angry, but teach yourself some ways to do that constructively. Personally, I love weeding my garden when I'm really pissed off because I get to murder little plants that aren't supposed to be in my vegetable patch, and I feel okay about it. But teach yourself some good anger management. Teach yourself how to love yourself and to not try and self-destruct, because they've taught you how to do that. And journaling can help you work it out. Art and art therapy in some form can help you work it out. And then in the early stages, get yourself safe. That's probably the number one hardest step. Get safe, which means you may have to cut off conversations with family. You may have to cut off with conversations with friends you've had your whole life, and just be okay with that. And if someone can't hear you on what you're talking, and this goes to other people who aren't mind control survivors, but who are maybe delving into like the conspiracy research and are hitting this wall of like, oh, my family and friends. And gosh, I know I have a lot of compassion for all of us, because it's really hard. You're like, okay, well, now I can't say hi to my neighbor 2 houses down because I let, something or other slip, and now they think I'm the devil. But, be okay with letting that go, because you will find the people who can hear you. Don't be afraid to walk away from people who aren't safe. And this is something that I learned from years later becoming a park ranger and doing like avalanche training and, mountain climbing and all this stuff. Learn to live, to wimp out another day. Okay?
Mm,
It's very good
mm,
advice.
yeah.
And that you don't have to fight every battle right now. there's a great line from the Bob Dylan song, um, "In the final end, he won the war after losing every battle." Okay, I have lost a bazillion battles, you guys. I have lost a bazillion battles, and I'm here right now talking to Charlie because you know what? I won a couple too, and I won the ones that really counted. So, be kind to yourself, be willing to learn, to live, to wimp out another day, whether that's having to go to work and deal with that terrible situation because you need the money because you're gonna go ahead and put out your podcast the next day, or you're gonna, you know, do something beautiful in your community to help people. You know, you have to make hard choices right now. But use your energy efficiently, get safe, allow the parts some kind of place to where you can dialogue and get your memories back. And I would include that to everyone who's been around this, neck of the woods for the last 40 years, because you've seen things that have happened. And I think there's a lot of collective amnesia with the dissociation that all of us have had to live in order to put up with this place, that is going to be able to start to have some movement. It's been pretty molasses, but Pluto's in Aquarius now, and we're in this new phase where the underworld is going to come up, and you're not going to be able to hide from it. So you're not going to be able to run from it. You're not going to be able to hide from it. The best thing you can do is turn and look evil in the eye and just hold your ground. Just hold your ground. You don't have to be violent. You don't have to be hateful. And you don't have to let them walk on you anymore. And just be you. Be authentic for the first time in your life, because most of us have never been allowed to do that.
Wow. I really appreciate you coming on. I worry about, on the one hand, this is extremely interesting, and I don't want to be exploitive of your situation. But I think that the more we talk about this, the more the general public hears that this is a thing or a possible thing that could have happened. It makes it a little bit more real, takes a little bit of the power away from them, if we know about this. So, in the end, I would rather talk about this than not talk about it, even though I recognize how horrible of a subject it is. I think the best thing we can do is put a human face on it, right? You're a perfect person to
Yeah.
put a human face on this, and this is well, you've got your sense of humor about it, and you and that's a great place to start, because this is not your fault. And it and it I'm so sorry that this happened to you and to the other people who've had this happen to them by horrible monsters that do these sorts of things to children. I can forgive quite a bit, but I can't forgive this. You look like you were gonna say something, please.
I did. I wanted to just say, they don't think they're monsters. They truly believe, and this is maybe the really weirdest thing, they truly believe they're doing something beneficial.
Yep.
And I think that's the hardest part for people to swallow with this. I also wanted to say, if you're looking for some more maybe technical details and maybe less of a personal face to this, really want to recommend an article. It's called DID, Dissociative Identity Disorder, which is how I live. The Politics of Memory, and it's by someone named Brian Moss. You can still find it on the web. Look around. And in it, it's gonna do some wonderful things with the logic research, and then his experience of having worked with people dealing with this, and how he's been able to put some things together. But I want to emphasize that yes, they're monsters, but they don't think they are, and that's probably why they're quite dangerous. But there is a way through, and it's worth getting to understand, because when I talked to someone this summer who's an expert in this, and I was like, yeah, it's happened to thousands of people. And he looked at me and he said, no, Annalie, it's happened to millions. And I'm only talking about the ones who survived. and I'm only talking about the ones in the United States. Okay, so if you understand what's happening in places like North Korea and China and some of the weird stuff with the Taliban and these weird groups in Africa and that, and what they're doing to the kids there and stuff
Yeah.
with Boko Haram, and
Yeah.
how the child soldier stuff even happened with these massacres in Africa and that. His statistic was strictly speaking about survivors who did not die in the United States and are alive now. We're talking about millions of people, just this country alone. And so I need to put that out there, that there's a more than just me. And so when you have the neighbor who's really weird and like you never see them leave and they obviously are struggling to even communicate, just have some kind eyes for that, because they may be someone who has some pretty unique wisdom that is going to help if this really does blow up in the way in which some people think it's going to. You're going to need people like me and who know how to navigate some really weird shit stealthily. And we've been ostracized and persecuted for a really long time, but we also have the keys to figuring out some pretty tricky situations in a very Houdini-like way. A lot of people call me that. They're like, "You're so Houdini-like. I didn't even know." Like, yeah, you know why I'm still standing in front of you is because I figured out how to do that. So don't discount us. And that's why I think Survivor's coming forward right now, even though you have a difficult job of getting through the heavy lifting of your memory work and getting stabilized to where you're not losing your shit all the time, which um, you have a lot to share with this world on how we're going to be able to pull through this next phase as the controllers really put the pedal to the metal, because you know how to drive the broken bus.
That's a good place to leave it. That's Annalie Cummings, everybody. Thank you for your story. For those of you that are interested, you want to connect with me, the website, macroaggressions.io, is the best place to do that. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.